Hello, my name is Dr. Chris Heeb, the Debt Doctor, and I welcome you to the Debt Doctor 911 podcast, where each week I, along with my dear friend and financial expert Richard Schaffer, will shift your focus from living paycheck to paycheck to a more solution-based process that will ultimately revolutionize your overall financial health. We will expose the hidden secrets about our financial system that banks and lenders never tell you about when it comes to getting rid of your debt and building your wealth. So make sure to listen every Thursday as we resuscitate your financial health and keep the lenders from flatlining your financial goals. All here on Debt Doctor 911. Hey, Richard, how are you doing this week, my friend? Glad to be back with you again for another episode of Debt Doctor 911.
I'm doing good, Chris. It's good to be sort of back to work here after a nice needed break for the holiday weekend.
Yeah, no kidding. It's been kind of crazy this week. Myself up here in the Midwest, I know things have been kind of crazy down there in Florida. Luckily, you survived the Hurricane Elsa, right?
Well, when you already have an 11-year-old daughter, you've had enough Elsa in your life for about the last 5 years anyway. So that's the last thing I need to hear again. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I can understand that. Hey, on today's podcast, we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. As you know, last week it was our first podcast, and we kind of gave an overview of everything that was going on, not only in the economy for that week, but really kind of setting the stage for why we're doing this podcast. And we're going to continue on, talking about topics that are very important to consumers, because our job really, and this is the mission of our program, is to really set the stage so people can understand better how to handle their finances. In particular, how they can eliminate their debt in record time, and also start the process of building wealth. So that's really why we're here. And Richard, one thing that came up last evening, I was having dinner with my two youngest boys, and they started talking about creating businesses. And I thought to myself, what opportunities we have as parents, okay, to help educate our children, especially in today's world, on the benefits of being fiscally responsible, understanding finances, understanding checking and savings accounts, and we're really going to talk a lot about that today. And I tell you, this is information that parents, if you're listening on our podcast, can really impart to their children and really set that stage for their financial growth, so that they are in a better position, a better place than what we were, say, 20, 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
So this is what we're going to expect on today's show. So we already have listeners, Richard, chiming in with questions, which is great. We love that. And we would encourage you to continue to do that, because, look, we're on every week, every Thursday at noon Eastern time, 11 o'clock Central time. So we encourage you to send your questions in. Just simply go to debtdoctor911.com. But we're going to answer one of our listeners' questions today. We're going to talk about what we were teasing you all about last week, which is the importance of rate of return and market myths. We're also going to talk about having a game plan, but a game plan with a financial GPS tool. And we're going to talk why that is why that's such a powerful combination. And then we're going to finish up with the whole concept, the idea of understanding why banks are robbing you of your own money-making power. That's right under your nose. They do it every single day, and you need to understand what to do about it. Okay, so those are the things we're going to talk about in today's podcast. And let's first move right into the question. So we had Patty from Chicago, Illinois. She checked out our website, moneymaxnow.com, and she had a question about the MoneyMax account program. If you go to moneymaxnow.com, everyone, you're going to get more information about what we're talking about. But she said, I already send extra money toward my debts every month. Why shouldn't I just keep doing that? That's a great question. So let me answer that question with another question. How do you know that the amounts you're sending are the best for you? People are notoriously timid about paying off debt. I mean, I've dealt with clients that they've had $20,000 in their savings account, and they owe $35,000 in their credit cards. and they will not part with that $20,000. They won't even consider taking $10,000 of that $20,000 and applying it towards some of their debt that they currently hold. Now, how insane is that? Okay, it just absolutely does not make any sense. But yeah, exactly, programming and fear. Okay, but let's look at this for an example. You might decide that you can afford to send an extra $100 to, say, your car loan every month. But what if you could effortlessly afford $107.42 this month? You just lost interest that could have been saved because you didn't pay down the debt as fast as you could have. Instead, you sent the same comfortable amount that you send every month. And how do you know that you've picked the right debts to send that money to? But what if that $100 could have eliminated more interest had it been sent to a debt, say XYZ, rather than that car loan? Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, yeah, you can send extra money toward your debts every month if you like, but you're not focusing the attention, okay, on really eliminating that debt in a strategic way. Am I right, Richard? Does that make sense?
You're 100% right. In fact, it's interesting. I was thinking of a pretty apropos analogy. I live over in Palm Beach, Chris, as you know, and I was being over to the west coast of Florida to visit family. And I think everybody on this call can relate to this. I don't remember how long ago cruise control was created for cars, but it's certainly been around for a very, very long time. But at some point, traditional, if you will, cruise control became a little bit obsolete because you could hardly ever use it, because as there became more and more traffic, you had to continue to start and stop your cruise control all the time, right? Because obviously there was a car in front of you. Well, now there's adaptive cruise control, right? So in my new car, I was heading over here, and obviously let's just say the speed limit, hopefully there's no police officers listening here. Let's say the speed limit is, 70. And I have my cruise control set for 79, right? Because I don't want to break that 10-mile limit there, right? Well, now if there's any traffic, it might adjust to 74, to 76, to 71, but I'm never touching the gas pedal. I'm never touching the brake, right? I'm never reactivating it. The same thing happens as you talked about perfectly. Of course, the goal is to get more dollars to our principal debt. There's no mystery there, right? It's not magic. However, we pick a number that sounds good that we can dance to or something, when in reality, there's a lot of specificity to it, because the reality, we don't have the same dollars coming in every day, and we don't have the same dollars going out every day. So how do we actually specifically determine what that number is? So I thought of that example of adaptive GPS, or adaptive cruise control, right? And as it relates to finances here, and you're 100% right, because for every dollar we're not deploying, we're foregoing money that otherwise could be used to leverage against those debts to pay them off more quickly and more efficiently.
Yeah, and what's also important to understand is, deciding which debt needs to get paid down and when to save the most interest long term is more complicated than simply finding out which has the highest interest rate or lowest balance and sending all of your extra money toward that debt, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, the answer to the question, Patty, is you really shouldn't just keep doing that. Okay. Again, go back to moneymaxnow.com, take a look at the information on that website. And what I would do is, if you have that concern, I think the best thing to do is to, enter your information at the website and schedule a free payoff analysis. Let's take a look and see exactly what would be the most ideal situation for you when it comes to your debt. That makes sense?
Well, and Chris, I'll add also that, listen, I got to take a moment though and acknowledge Patty though, because at least she's motivated to actually want to get these paid out. You got to start there, right? It's like a diet. I got to want to lose weight before I join the gym, because joining the gym isn't going to help me if I'm not motivated to lose weight. So in her case, she's actually focused on trying to accomplish that goal. We're just going to be able to help her strategically do it, not only more quickly and more consistently, more efficiently. And that's really the name of the game. So we certainly applaud her for actually having the fortitude to do it. It's just a matter of this taking it to another level, and why we're going to help revolutionize the way that people manage their money.
Exactly. And you know what the best part of this is, Richard? It's free.
Absolutely.
It's free. It is a free analysis to see exactly what this amazing financial tool can do for you. So
and I'm so proud that we do that. Yeah, there's nothing to lose, but potentially years off your debt and tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest.
Exactly. All right, so hey, let's move into our next segment because I know this is something you are apropos, you know a lot about, and we talked a little bit about it last podcast, but it's the whole concept of rate of return and market myths. So I'm going to let you start this segment off because I think you're going to add a great insight to this. So the stage is yours, Richard.
I appreciate it very much. Yeah, this is one of my soapbox topics, I will certainly say. Last week, we talked a little bit about the difference between interest rate and interest volume. I helped my niece, who's only 24 years old, close on her first house yesterday. And we were talking a little bit about that, right? And the real effective amount of interest you're paying. Well, the web is deeper than that, though, Chris, because one of the things that you'll notice is, and I'm going to illustrate it this way. Without visuals, it'll be a little bit more challenging, but I think the audience can get a little bit clearer idea of this on the podcast. So let's say, as an example, Chris, for argument's sake, let's say we could use any dollar amount. I'm just going to use, something simple here. Let's just say you had, $10,000. Okay. And I was a financial advisor and you knew me, you trusted me. And so you gave me that $10,000 day one. And somehow miraculously, I managed to give you 100% rate of return in year one, right? So at the end of year one, you start out with $10,000. You got 100% rate of return. How much you got now?
$20,000.
Absolutely. Well, you're feeling pretty good about life, and
life is good, my friend.
Richard is my best friend. Of course, as we know, the market there's a lot of volatility. So what goes up often comes down quicker and a little bit more expeditiously than we like. But let's take it this way. Let's say that you got 100% rate of return year one, but then next year got some bad news for you. The market drops 50%. Now that's only half of what you gained. However, what is 50% of 20,000?
That's $10,000.
Right, now you're back to $10,000. But you know what? Richard comes to the plate again. Year three, I give you another 100% rate of return, right? So once again, that 100% rate of return on that $10,000 goes to $20,000.
Yeah, $20,000. Right? That's right.
But so once again, you're loving rich, right? Now year four happens. Once again, that beautiful curve, that tidal wave occurs, and we lose 50% again. Now 50% of 20,000 is once again 10,000. Now here is the question for everybody in the audience here, so to speak. You started with $10,000 year one. Year four, you ended with $10,000. How much did you earn?
100%.
You earned zero because you started with $10,000 and you ended with $10,000.
Oh,
you earned nothing.
That's great. Yeah.
But now here's the tricky part. And everybody, I really need you to focus in on this, okay? This is where rate of return myth is actually born. So even though you started with 10 and ended with 10, you'd assume, well, that means I earned zero. Oh, but no. According to Money Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, and all these prospectuses, as you see, that actually claim what the rate of return is, 100 minus 50 plus 100 minus 50 is 100. Divided by 4, the total years that we're talking about right here, is 25. So according to quote unquote disclosure purposes, you actually, the performance, Chris, of your investment vehicle earned a 25% rate of return. Yet in reality, you earned zero. Now here's where it's even worse. If you take into account cost, fees, loads, expenses, possible tax implications, you probably lost 15, 20, maybe 25% actual active use of that money. Yet, according to all of these documents you're going to see, and again, I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but whether it's an individual prospectus or Money Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, et cetera, the performance legally, you can disclose that the performance of that vehicle earned a 25% rate of return, and it's completely hogwash, which is why we call it the rate of return myth. And that should really turn the average person on their head to start looking a little bit more auspiciously at these sort of numbers, because numbers can be manipulated in a big way, right? Pretty powerful stuff. And I can tell you that definitely changes. When we see, hey, this earned this or that, look very carefully, because percentages can be deceiving, just like interest rates are deceiving. It is a shell game, and it is rigged against the consumer in a way that they don't understand. Pretty powerful, isn't it?
It is. It makes me sick to my stomach, though, too.
It should. And And that's, one of the goals you said from podcast number 1 was to disturb people a little bit, and our goal is to help lift open or pull back the curtain, if you will, about how these financial institutions make money. Now, let me give you another example, a little bit more real example to the average person probably. Now, right now, we're talking a lot about the housing market and how hot the market is and et cetera. But I'm going to dial us back to about 2008 for just a moment. Now, for argument's sake, there isn't anybody that's probably over the age of, mid-late 20s that doesn't have some experience understanding the impact this had on society. But Chris, let's say for an example, you and your wife bought a little vacation condo somewhere down in Florida. Okay. Now I'm going to use a small dollar amount just to make the numbers work. Let's say you spent $100,000 on a little condo down there. Okay. And of course, back in 2008, there literally were areas where the market pulled back 40, 50, 60%. Almost hard to believe now looking back at it. But let's say worst case scenario, just to illustrate our point, you and your wife, Kathy, bought a $100,000 condo and it dropped 60%. Now, you started at $100,000. You lost 60%. What's the value now, Chris? 40,000, right? 40,000. Now, folks, this is the important part. Common sense would dictate if you started with 100 and you lost 60% and now you have 40, that you at least have to get that 60% back to be whole. Seems logical, right? But mathematically, it does not work that way, because you lost 60% of 100. What is 60% of 40,000? It's only 24,000. So you'd only actually go to 64,000. Reality is you'd have to earn 150% return or get 150% appreciation on that 40,000 just to get back to 100, just to get back to where you started. Now, think about that for a minute, Chris. Do you think the average person genuinely understands the impact of that? That would mean literally they'd have to get 150% rate of return, or let's just, for argument's sake, for simplicity, earn a 15% rate of return every year for 10 years to get that number. But see, that's the whole point, is we don't understand. So it's rate of return and market myth. Numbers can be deceiving. They are intentionally manipulated against the consumer and rigged against them for banks and financial institutions to obviously, game the system to their advantage. It's first time I learned that many years ago. It was disturbing. It's part of the reason we're so passionate about providing this kind of education.
No kidding. I mean, I'm literally sick to my stomach. I literally want to throw up. I mean, it makes you feel like you've been taken advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's by design.
Exactly. And that this whole, market, the whole financial system is rigged against us.
Absolutely.
And if you don't understand, and if you don't understand, how you play the game, you're, as they say, SOL. Well, it's the truth. And what's even more frightening is, are they really teaching this to our kids in school? I mean, are they really taking the time out to sit down, with teenagers, young adults, and walking them through the nuances of, finances, so that they're better equipped to go out in the real world and make it happen? I mean, the answer to that question is absolutely not. Okay. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Richard, on, that's even more important for what we're doing to help people.
Well, and I just add one comment to that, Chris. You did such a great job of laying this out on our first kind of our pilot podcast, which is that part of our goal is to really empower people with the ability to bank like a bank, right? To really understand these proven systems and strategies that they can put to work for them, not these big, massive financial conglomerates that have the biggest buildings in town.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you know what? We're going to take a break here in just a second, but you talked about what goes up must come down. Okay, I have a trivia question for you. Who is the artist that actually wrote that song? Do you know?
Oh, dang! I know the song you're talking about.
What goes up must come down. No, it was Tyrone Davis.
I wouldn't have gotten that one.
Tyrone Davis. God, where the hell is that guy at? I think he was a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, you got a couple of years on me, Chris. I don't think I would have known that one. I'm sorry.
All right, listen, everyone. We'll be right back after this short message. These days, American consumers are struggling just to keep pace with rising prices for basic staples. Are you stressed that you live paycheck to paycheck? Are you frustrated that you cannot seem to get ahead, always backing yourself into a financial corner? Are you hopeless that your financial predicament will never improve and you are just going to have to live with it forever? Recognizing that you need to do something about your debts is an important first step on your road to financial independence. Whether your debt problems have become a pressing emergency or you're ready to start that journey to financial freedom, you have a plausible option at your disposal. It's called the Money Max account, a financial tool that will transform your financial life. Denise says this is the best debt reduction system we have ever seen. We reduced our mortgage payoff date from 27.5 years to 8.3 years. Here's how you get started. Write this down. Go to moneymaxnow.com. Schedule your free payoff analysis to find out your exact debt-free date, how much you are going to save, and what wealth you could build for your future. It's free, and there's no obligation whatsoever. That's moneymaxnow.com. moneymaxnow.com. Now is the time to start that journey to completely eliminate your debt and start building your wealth. Go to moneymaxnow.com to schedule your free payoff analysis. That's moneymaxnow.com. Hey, and welcome back to Debt Doctor 911 as we move into the last part of our podcast for today. Hey, you know what, Richard? I don't know if you saw this, but just read this in the Wall Street Journal, and this is going to be a great segue into our next topic. But you know what? Americans are borrowing again, and in some cases at levels not seen in more than a decade. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that consumer demand for auto loans and leases, general purpose credit cards, and personal loans were up 39% in April compared with the same period last year when it was only 11%. So that's kind of alarming. So here we go again. People are borrowing more money. They're getting more credit cards. They're postponing, having to pay the piper, and that is going to be a problem. So even more important, ladies and gentlemen, what kind of game plan do you have? And that's what we're going to talk about now. So I'm going to throw this question out to everyone right now. Do you know the exact day, month, and year you'll be completely debt-free? The fact is, most people don't. But if you did, how would that affect your life? Think about that for a second. What would your debt-free life look like? I mean, for me, I think I'd be doing cartwheels, down the hallway. See, getting out of debt on your own is a lot like going on a road trip without GPS. You know your destination, but if you make a wrong turn, it's hard to see how it affects your estimated time of arrival, okay, what we call your ETA. So you want to get rid of your debt as soon as possible, but between your mortgage, car loans, student loans, it's very difficult to tell when you'll reach your destination. And all the little purchases you make along the way can have a big impact on your travel time. So, think about what everyone's doing right now. Okay. They're going out and they said that there's more auto loans that were given over the past 30 to 60 days. People are, you're starting to see these credit card companies or these businesses where you can purchase something and then spread it out over 6 or maybe 8 payments over, 2 or 3 months. I mean, the bottom line is that we are continuously finding ways to stay in debt. But what if you could have a financial tool that acts as your financial GPS, taking everything you owe and everything you earn into consideration and giving you the fastest route to paying off your debt and creating wealth for you and your family? Think about that for a minute. And guess what? We have that comprehensive financial management tool, and it exists to pull all of your financial accounts into one central location, and then it uses advanced financial strategies to create the most effective, tailor-fitted strategy to help you achieve your goals of freedom from debt. Now that is a game plan, and that has a GPS tool. And that is, my friends, a powerful combination. Rich, what do you think about that? I mean, a lot of us out there just, are wandering around not knowing exactly what to do. We don't have a game plan. We're trying to, wing this on our own. And here, we have a technology in the financial arena that will help us get out of debt.
Well, it's been kind of alludes back to what we talked to last week. My grandfather's favorite words. People buy things they don't need with money they don't have to impress people they don't even know. But we become such a finance-based societal or economic structure here in our country. Where I'm gonna it's always immediate gratification, but I'm gonna defer one thing: the ability to pay for it, right? And we've developed this psychology. Not only have we years ago. In our grandparents' era, it was evil to have debt, right? Nobody, it was almost like an embarrassment to owe anybody anything, right? Well, we have literally made it cool to finance things, right? Now, e-cash was one of the ways that we entered in that space, right? We started using a debit card instead of cash. Now, that's really our money, but it started creating this psychological shift that was, I can constantly use plastic for something and I'm not monitoring what I'm paying for. Even that, I'm going to get a statement in 30 days. Even if you pay off your credit card every month, right? I'm going to put that off and I'm going to pay it in 30 days. Or like you said, 60 days or 90 days, or a furniture loan that says 18 months from now, you can pay it. Same as cash. If you don't have the money today, what makes you so sure you're going to have it 18 months from now? And now you're going to pay all that interest retroactively. It is for one side's benefit. It is to the financial institution's benefit. And we have really got to shift this. If you remember, Chris, about 5-6 months ago, I sort of prophesied that we were going to start getting into the same debt crunch again. Because once government subsidy and stimulus and additional unemployment benefits and PPP and all this stuff ends up going away, people start artificially living off of that additional stimulated money. Now, all of a sudden, at some point, you got to pay the piper. And I think that it's going to come at a time where both real estate and equities are going to flatten and pull back over the next 12 to 18 months. And that is that's a bad set of circumstances when you've increased your debt, but obviously the return that's related to your assets is decreased. And if people don't have reserves, which clearly they must not if they're running up debt, this is where this financial GPS tool becomes really, really critical. I mean, think about it in the real world. How many of you use GPS every single day? Why don't you do without it for 30 days and see how that works, right? So just think about that, something as simple as navigation. Finances is way more complicated because we're taking in different dollars. And one thing is important, you said, Chris, debt service is dependent upon one magic bullet: ongoing, consistent, never-ending cash flow. Well, hold on. What happens if there's a disruption to that? Even for a month or two? Illness, unemployment, divorce, something, who knows? All of a sudden, it's dependent upon that ongoing revenue stream and it stops. That is why people become a slave to debt, and it is a bad, bad situation to be in.
Absolutely. Again, it behooves people to get proactive and do something about it. I mean, I don't know. Wake up, people. Okay, this is the time to literally wake up. Now we can have another podcast about the state of our society right now, and if in regards to waking up. Okay, everyone needs to wake up.
Yeah.
Okay, in more ways than one. But this is one of the most important things that everyone should be concerned about. They should be scared to death about, and they should be doing something about. And that leads us right into our next segment, which is many people don't realize that the banks, okay, as much as, when we need money, okay, we go to the financial institutions, okay, but really those banks are out there to make money. And what we're going to talk about, and this is the last segment of our show today, is, understanding what banks are doing, okay, to actually make money with your money. Because let me tell you, when you park your money in a checking account, okay, the banks are using that money, okay, to make money. Yes, banks use your money to loan out to other people. They charge interest to those people for the use of that money. There is a a difference in what they're paying you, okay, if it's in your savings account. Rarely do you see checking accounts that have an actual interest-bearing checking accounts. There are some out there, but the banks they know what they're doing, okay, and they're making money. They're making money on your money. They're charging you ridiculous fees. I just noticed this. I don't know if you've seen this, Richard, but so we obviously have a checking and savings account, and it's a very fluid combination of accounts. We park more of our money in our savings account because we want to take advantage of the interest that we can earn. But then if we have something come through our checking account, the bank will automatically transfer the money out of our savings account to cover whatever expense we have on our checking account. They still charge you $2. Think about that, okay? That's the money's there. They have it built into your actual registration or application,
like an automated overdraft protection sort of thing, where it transfers from one account to the other.
Exactly. They shouldn't have to do that. It's again, how would you feel being nickel and dime every single day? Eventually you'd get pissed off, right?
Well, Chris, they do it because they can.
Exactly, right? I mean, it's crazy, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about, understanding the importance of, not holding all of your money in your actual checking account. Make sure that you have a savings account. Make sure that that savings account is an interest-bearing savings account, and start to understand the undercurrents of what banks are doing. Because look, here are some interesting statistics. The average checking account balance among Americans with checking accounts is about $2,900. Okay, and that was according to a 2019 survey conducted online by the Harris Poll. Think about that. You're parking a lot of your money in your checking account when you could easily be shifting it over to your savings account, okay, to gain interest. And banks actually lose money. The annual cost to a bank to maintain a checking account is between $250 and $400 per year. So think about that. They're going to charge you fees, and they're going to do it because they can, because they need to offset that charge that they have to pay in order to maintain your checking account.
Well, first of all, I wonder who came up with that study, because somehow I think that was self-servingly perpetrated by some financial institution. So I'm not sure the cost is that high. So I'm a little suspicious of that number to begin with. But
what's funny about that? It's an estimate based upon the American Bankers Association.
Oh well, the shocker there. And I'll tell you something interesting. There's a great quote, Chris. We talk about a lot. You're a very personal development kind of guy. There's a great expression we've all heard: if you're not growing, you're dying. Well, if your money's not growing, it's dying, because there's this thing called inflation. And I think people forgot that it was a real thing, right? Now, it's obviously increasing significantly now. We see it across the board in hard materials, et cetera, building materials, gas, et cetera. But historically, it's been either side of about 3%, 2.5% to 3.5%, right? So right out of the gate, if you're not earning at least that amount, you're going backwards. So if you're not growing, you can't even stand still. If you're not growing, you're not putting your money to work, you're dying, financially speaking. And that's a lot of what we're beginning to see, Chris.
What's this idea or this concept? I know we've spoken about this off the air in regards to what banks do with your money during off hours.
Sure. Yeah, I love that one. There's two concepts. One I'll just skim on, which is, when you start looking at, we talk about this a lot, so I want to be respectful about it. We're not bashing the banks. It's imitation is the greatest form of flattery. How do we do what they do, so to speak? So first, they understand not just volume, right? We talk about interest volume versus interest rate, right? But it's volume and velocity. It's how much and how fast they can leverage that money. First of all, banks do something unique that none of us even really think about. It's called fractional lending. So as an example, if they loan you $1,000, they can borrow $10,000 from the Fed. If they give you a $100,000 line of credit, they can borrow $1 million from the Fed. By the way, spoiler alert, this is the reason banks are always in trouble and basically needing to be bailed out, because their charter allows them to do this, right? So they get to it's almost like buying on margin, but they can do it tenfold. That's one of the problems. Nothing we can do about that one. But the second one is this. Let's talk about what banks don't do, Chris. Here's what they don't do. When you and your wife go to the bank and you give them $100 or $1,000 or $10,000, here's what they don't do. They don't take your money and put a little drawer that says, this is Dr. Heeb's money. No. It's all about deploying that money. So every single day, they actually transfer that money at what they call an overnight lending rate to other financial institutions at a 0.5 percentage point a day. Now, pure math, that's roughly 180% a year they're earning on the average person. Now, let's back up and think, why is that happening? Well, 83% of all bank accounts, Chris, right now are non-interest bearing accounts. Now, some people in the audience could say, well, that's because interest rates are so low on savings accounts right now. Well, okay, fair enough. That's true. But this statistic has been pretty true for the last decade or two. Well, interest rates haven't always been that low. It's just the ideology of it. And here's why. So the average family in America makes roughly $60,000 a year, $59,000 and change. So let's call it $5,000 a month. And they have maybe $3,500 to $4,000 in fixed expenses, car payments, other sorts of debt service, mortgage, et cetera. So they might have maybe another $150, $200 a week they spend on going out to dinner, to the movies, whatever, right? Back before the pandemic when people did a lot more of that kind of thing. So out of that $5,000 they earned, they might only be left with, $200, $300, $400, $500 left at the end of the month. So the average consumer, Chris, thinks, oh, what difference would it make to make, interest on $300 or $400? You see, they're missing the point. Banks leverage every dollar you earn that you deposit. Every day it sits there until the day you spend it. They're actively deploying and putting that money to work. So our goal is, how do we help the average person, once again, Chris, bank like a bank, emulate these proven systems and strategies, because it's all about putting that money to work. You know that if we're not, you're a doctor, if we're not physically moving, we're dying, right? If we're not growing, we're dying. The same thing with money. This is where having a financial GPS related strategy allows you to deploy that money and maximize the leverage of every dollar every day until you spend it, to literally bank like a bank.
That is awesome, Richard. And you know what? We're going to end our podcast on that note. So Richard gave you a very specific action step. Okay. It's called become proactive in your finances. And one way to do that is to utilize a financial tool. So look, everyone, I want you to write this down. Go to moneymaxnow.com. Check out the website, schedule your payoff analysis, start the process of getting your finances in control. That is important. It's all about dynamic movement, okay? Don't be static. Don't sit on the couch, okay? And be that couch potato, right, Richard?
That's absolutely right.
Hey, listen, we're going to go ahead and take off for today. We really appreciate all of you listening in. Listen, if you have a question, make sure that you go to debtdoctor911.com. Give us a question. We'll make sure that we take a look at it. And on the following week, we'll go ahead and if we choose your question, you'll know, and we'll answer it for you. But here's what to look forward to for next week. We're going to expose the truth about why you should pay off your mortgage as soon as possible, regardless if your financial planner, yes, your financial planner, is telling you that not paying off your mortgage gives you a nice tax deduction. We're also going to, yeah, can you believe that? I mean, I've had conversations with financial planners where they're like, are you insane? There is no advantage whatsoever to pay off your mortgage as quickly as possible. Well, guess what, everyone? We're going to show you why it is important to do that.
Oh, that's one of my favorites, Chris. I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, and we're also going to talk about why biweekly payments to your debt is a waste of time. And then also why trying to figure all this out on your own, okay, your road to debt elimination is also a waste of your time. Look, our job is to provide you with the best action steps to improve your financial situation. And we're going to do that every single week. So listen, everyone, have a wonderful rest of the week, and we will see you on the next podcast of Debt Doctor 911.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much for listening to Debt Doctor 911. We hope that this episode has helped you transform the way you think, giving you new ideas, and provided you a new perspective on the desire to eliminate all of your debt and build wealth, so you can get out there and create the financial freedom you and your family deserve. If you would like to know your exact payoff date and see what our program could do for you, just go to moneymaxnow.com to schedule your free payoff analysis. That's moneymaxnow.com. Our podcast is for informational purposes only. The purpose of this podcast is to provide you with helpful information on the subjects discussed. Careful attention has been paid to ensure the accuracy of the information, but we cannot assume responsibility for the validity or consequences of its use. As each individual situation is unique, we disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects that may result from the use or application of the information discussed on this podcast. Any use of the information from this podcast is the sole responsibility of the listener. Results will vary based on an individual personal financial situation. All time and interest saving examples on this podcast are strictly hypothetical. Individual time and interest savings amounts are subject to individual qualification. No financial advice or recommendations have been made as a part of this podcast. We encourage you to seek the advice of a financial professional. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us help more people just like you make a difference in this world. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it in your Instagram stories, and tag us at The Debt Doctor. That's TheDebtDr, and at FinPro Advisors. That's FinProAdvisors. Finally, always remember, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. See you next week.